I never thought my life would revolve around baseball. Growing up, I barely knew the difference between a fastball and a curveball. Then I met Ryan. Ryan King was the kind of man who commanded a room without even trying. Tall, lean, with that effortless swagger that only professional athletes seem to have. He was the star pitcher for the Milwaukee Renegades, and from the moment our eyes met at a charity gala, it was like the world shifted. I was just a girl from the Midwest, managing social media for nonprofits, but somehow, Ryan made me feel like I belonged in his world of luxury, fame, and endless possibilities. We got married 2 years later, a ceremony straight out of a fairy tale. The team flew in, reporters hovered outside, and my dad cried walking me down the aisle. Life with Ryan was a whirlwind. Games, press events, lavish parties. I became Emily King, the baseball wife everyone envied. At first, it was perfect. Ryan was everything I thought a husband should be, funny, attentive, and utterly devoted. I traveled with him to games, watching him dominate on the mound, fans chanting his name. He'd look up at me in the stands and wink, and my heart would skip a beat. Those were the moments I thought would last forever. But the cracks started showing a year into our marriage. Little things at first. A text he'd quickly swipe away, a late-night team meeting that didn't make sense. I chalked it up to the pressures of his career. Athletes lived in a different world, I told myself. I just needed to trust him. Then came the night everything unraveled. It was a Tuesday, a rare evening when Ryan didn't have a game. He'd promised to stay in and watch a movie with me, something we hadn't done in weeks. But as I set up the popcorn and dimmed the lights, his phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Ryan was in the shower, and the name on the screen caught my eye, Sophie. I hesitated. I wasn't the kind of wife who snooped, but something about that name sent a chill down my spine. Before I knew it, I'd picked up the phone and unlocked it. Ryan had never bothered changing his passcode. What I found made my knees buckle. Messages. Dozens of them. Flirty, explicit, full of inside jokes I didn't understand. Sophie wasn't just some random woman, she was part of his world, someone he saw often. From the texts, I pieced together that she was a journalist who covered the Renegades. And their relationship wasn't just casual, it had been going on for months. When Ryan came out of the bathroom, toweling his hair dry, I was sitting on the couch, his phone in my hand. The look on his face when he saw me, half panic, half resignation, told me everything I needed to know. Emily, I can explain, he started, but his voice faltered. Don't, I said, my voice shaking. Just, don't. That night, I left. I packed a bag, drove to my best friend Sarah's apartment, and cried until I couldn't breathe. Ryan called and texted relentlessly, but I ignored every message. How could he do this to me? To us? I'd built my entire life around him, given up my career to support his, and this was how he repaid me? For weeks, I felt like a ghost. I avoided the news, knowing Ryan's betrayal would be splashed across every gossip column once the story broke. The media loved him too much to ignore the drama. My worst fears were confirmed when I saw a headline, Renegades Ryan King caught in cheating scandal. But it wasn't Ryan who came under fire, it was me. Tabloids spun the story, painting me as the nagging, controlling wife who drove him away. Fans on social media called me a gold digger, saying I'd only married him for his money. The betrayal wasn't just personal anymore, it was public. The final blow came when Sophie herself went on a sports podcast and laughed about their affair. Ryan and I have a connection Emily could never understand, she said, her voice dripping with arrogance. He deserves someone who gets him. That was the moment something inside me snapped. I wasn't just hurt anymore, I was angry. I'd spent my life putting others first, but now it was time to fight back. I hired a lawyer, a sharp-tongued woman named Dana who didn't take crap from anyone. The divorce proceedings were brutal, but I refused to back down. Ryan tried to settle quietly, offering me money to keep things clean, but I wouldn't let him off the hook. I wanted the truth to come out, no matter how messy it got. In the end, I walked away with my dignity, and a lot of lessons learned. The tabloids eventually moved on, and so did I. I moved back to Chicago, took a job managing social media for a startup, and started going to therapy. Slowly, I rebuilt my life, piece by piece. Ryan? His career never recovered. The Renegades dropped him after a dismal season, and his endorsement deals dried up. Last I heard, he was playing for some minor league team in Texas, still trying to reclaim the glory days. Sophie? She disappeared from the media after her outlet fired her for ethical violations. As for me, I've found peace. I'm still not sure I'll ever trust someone the way I trusted Ryan, but I'm okay with that. I've learned to trust myself, and that's enough for now. Life throws curveballs, but sometimes, you learn to hit them right back. I wish I could tell you that I found closure in some grand, cinematic way, that Ryan came crawling back with an apology so heartfelt it wiped away all the pain. Or that I found someone new who swept me off my feet and reminded me what love is supposed to feel like. But life isn't a Hollywood movie. It's messy and complicated, and closure doesn't come gift-wrapped. The first year after the divorce was the hardest. Every time I heard a crowd cheer at a bar or saw a baseball game on TV, it brought me back to those nights in the stands, cheering Ryan on like he was invincible. I'd flip the channel or leave the room, but the memories would sneak up on me anyway, like ghosts refusing to rest. Then came the small victories. I joined a women's kickboxing class. At first, it was just to blow off steam, but it became more than that. Every punch, every kick felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that Ryan had taken. The women there weren't just fellow gym-goers, they became my friends, my support system. They didn't care that I used to be married to a pro athlete or that I'd been dragged through the mud by the tabloids. To them, I was just Emily, the quiet, determined woman who always stayed late to practice her form. One night after class, my coach, a no-nonsense woman named Tammy, pulled me aside. "You're strong, Emily," she said. "But you gotta stop carrying the weight of that man on your shoulders. He's not worth it." Her words hit me harder than any punch I'd thrown. She was right. I'd been holding on to the pain, letting it define me. I didn't want to be Ryan King's ex-wife anymore. I wanted to be me. So, I started saying yes to life again. I went on solo hikes, took pottery classes, and even joined a book club where I met people who didn't care about my past. It wasn't easy, there were still nights when I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd ever feel whole again. But those nights became fewer and farther between. Then, one afternoon, I got a call that caught me off guard. It was from Sarah, my best friend. "Have you seen the news?" she asked, her voice tinged with excitement. "No," I said, rolling my eyes. I tried to avoid it. "Well, you might want to make an exception," she said. "Ryan just gave an interview. You're going to want to hear this." Against my better judgment, I pulled up the clip. It was an interview with a small sports podcast, one of those shows that catered to die-hard fans who followed minor league players. Ryan looked different, older, more worn. His once perfect smile seemed forced, his eyes dull. "I made mistakes," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "I hurt people I shouldn't have hurt. Especially Emily. She didn't deserve what I put her through." I paused the video, my heart racing. Part of me wanted to watch the rest, to hear him admit every lie, every betrayal. But I didn't need to. For the first time, I realized I didn't need an apology from Ryan to move on. His words, his guilt, it was his burden to carry, not mine. The real closure came a few weeks later, in the most unexpected way. I was walking home from the coffee shop near my apartment when I spotted a familiar face. It was Sophie. She was sitting alone at an outdoor table, staring at her phone with a look of defeat. She looked different too, less polished, more ordinary. Our eyes met for a brief, awkward moment. I could see the recognition in her face, followed by a flicker of shame. I expected to feel anger, but all I felt was pity. She wasn't my enemy anymore. She was just another person who'd made bad choices, like Ryan, like me. I didn't stop to talk to her. I didn't need to. Instead, I walked past her, head held high, feeling lighter than I had in years. These days, my life is simpler. I'm not chasing someone else's dreams or trying to fit into a world that never really felt like mine. I still manage social media for a living, but now I freelance, working with small businesses and nonprofits that actually make a difference. I even started traveling, nothing extravagant, just little weekend trips to places I'd always wanted to see. I'm still not sure what the future holds, but for the first time in a long time, I'm okay with that. I've learned that life isn't about being perfect or having everything figured out. It's about finding joy in the little things, a good book, a sunny day, the satisfaction of knowing you survived what was meant to break you. And who knows? Maybe one day I'll find love again. Or maybe I won't. Either way, I'll be fine. Because I've learned the most important lesson of all, I don't need anyone else to complete me. I am enough. Life moved forward in ways I never anticipated. It wasn't dramatic or fast, but it was steady. I found comfort in the routine I built for myself. Morning coffee at the cafe around the corner. Evening walks in the park, watching the sun dip below the skyline. Each day felt like another stitch in the quilt I was sewing, a life that was uniquely mine. But life has a funny way of testing you just when you think you've moved on. One Saturday afternoon, as I was browsing a local farmer's market, I saw him. Ryan. He was standing by a stall, examining a basket of peaches like he was deciding if they were worth it. For a second, I froze. My heart raced, my breath hitched, and a million memories came flooding back. But then, something unexpected happened. I didn't feel anger. Or sadness. Or even regret. I felt nothing. It was surreal, seeing the man who had once been my entire world now reduced to just another face in the crowd. He looked thinner, more worn down than I remembered. He had the same signature cap pulled low over his eyes, but it didn't carry the same aura it used to. He was just Ryan, and for the first time, I realized that he didn't have any power over me anymore. He turned and saw me. Our eyes locked, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. Then, he walked over. "Emily," he said, his voice cautious, like he wasn't sure if I'd bolt or slap him. "Hey." "Hey," I said back, keeping my tone even. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me rattled. We stood there, awkwardly, surrounded by the chatter of people and the scent of fresh produce. Finally, he broke the silence. "You look good," he said, his hands shoved into his pockets. "Really good." "Thanks," I replied, not returning the compliment. "You, still in town?" "Yeah," he said, scratching the back of his neck. "Got a coaching gig with a local college team. It's not the majors, but, you know," his voice trailed off, and I could tell he was waiting for me to say something to fill the void. I didn't. I'm really sorry," he said after a moment. "For everything. I know I said it before, but I needed to say it to your face." I nodded, not out of forgiveness, but acknowledgement. "I appreciate that," I said simply. I didn't offer him any more than that, and I think he understood that this wasn't a moment for reconciliation. This was closure, for him, not me. I'd already found mine. "Well," he said, shifting uncomfortably. "I should let you go. It was good to see you." "You too," I replied, though I didn't mean it. As he walked away, I felt a strange sense of relief. Like I'd finally put down the last heavy stone I'd been carrying. That night, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, thinking about how far I'd come. Ryan's apology didn't change anything for me. I didn't need it, and I didn't need him. What mattered was that I had built something for myself, something real, something lasting. It was in that quiet moment, watching the city lights flicker against the night sky, that I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. I wasn't defined by the love I had lost or the mistakes I had made. I was defined by the love I had found for myself, the kind of love that doesn't depend on anyone else, the kind that stays with you no matter what. And that was more than enough. Maybe that's the happy ending we don't talk about enough. Not the prince on the white horse or the perfect romance wrapped up in a bow. But the kind of ending where you realize you're your own hero. That you're stronger, wiser, and braver than you ever thought you could be. That's my story. Not about betrayal, or baseball, or broken promises, but about learning how to catch life's curveballs and throw them right back, harder and faster than anyone ever expected. Life didn't magically transform into a dream, but it became something I could truly call my own. It's funny, when you stop chasing the idea of what your life should look like, you start noticing all the little joys that were there all along. The mornings where the coffee tastes just right. The satisfaction of finishing a book that stays with you long after the last page. The way the world feels quieter when you finally stop fighting yourself. I thought the chapter with Ryan would haunt me forever, but the truth is, it faded like a distant memory. It wasn't erased, but it no longer dictated the way I saw myself. I had been a wife, a cheerleader, a support system for someone who never truly valued me. Now, I was just Emily. And that was enough. A few months after I ran into Ryan, I found myself at the same farmer's market. I wasn't looking for anything in particular, just a lazy Saturday spent browsing stalls and breathing in the crisp fall air. As I wandered past a stand selling homemade candles, a man struck up a conversation with me. He had kind eyes, a crooked smile, and a laugh that felt like warmth on a cold day. His name was Mark, and he was the furthest thing from Ryan I could have imagined. Mark wasn't flashy or larger than life. He didn't come with a stadium full of fans or an entourage of admirers. He was just a guy who loved woodworking and baked his own bread. But he asked me about my favorite books and listened like my answers mattered. He made me laugh with the kind of ease I hadn't felt in years. We didn't fall in love right away. It wasn't fireworks or movie magic, it was steady and kind, like building a fire that keeps you warm all night. And for the first time, I let myself believe I deserved that. Not because I needed someone to save me, but because I'd saved myself, and Mark felt like a bonus, a wonderful, unexpected bonus. It's been a year now, and I'm still discovering what it means to be truly happy. I'm not afraid of the past anymore. The betrayal that once felt like it would break me is now just a story, a reminder of how far I've come. Ryan's chapter in my life taught me about heartbreak, resilience, and the strength it takes to rebuild. But it's not the whole book. Not even close. Mark and I have a small apartment with mismatched furniture and too many plants. I still manage social media accounts for nonprofits, but I've also started writing on the side, sharing stories about love, loss, and all the messy things in between. Sometimes I sit on the balcony with a glass of wine, looking out at the city lights, and marvel at how far I've come. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: you can't control the curveballs life throws at you, but you can control how you swing. And sometimes, the most beautiful things happen when you stop trying to win and just learn to play the game. So here I am, standing at home plate, ready for whatever comes next. And for the first time in a long time, I'm not afraid.